You're about to discover one of the best gambits in the history of chess. Plus, this gambit is played with the black pieces, and it's let me have some fun and win a ton of games. So in this video, I am going to show you exactly how to play it and a whole bunch of very clever traps you can use when you play it yourself. What I like most about this gambit is that we play it specifically when your opponents decide to play the Italian opening against us. That is to say, the most played opening in chess history. So we can use this gambit on many occasions. When they play the Italian opening, you simply play the move f5 right here, which is a very extremely powerful move. First of all, we're giving away a pawn, but it's a completely poisoned pawn. It simply cannot be taken by your opponent. If they take the pawn, they'll have serious problems. But don't worry, I'll explain what to do in this video. Whether they capture the pawn or not. But what happens, chess teacher, if they capture this pawn? Why is it a poisoned pawn? Well, simply put, what we were doing with the move f5 wasn't just giving away a pawn, but deflecting their center pawn. It was the pawn holding their position together. Now we're going to play this spectacular pawn advance, e4, because we've deflected their center pawn. And let's look at something. We're attacking a knight. Very good, chess teacher. Everyone can see that. But where can this knight go? It couldn't go to these two squares. Why? Because the queen is controlling them. It couldn't jump here either because the knight controls it, just like the d4 square. Therefore, this knight, simply for having captured the pawn, should retreat back to its original square. Alright, if it retreats, we'd simply play d5, attacking this bishop, and when it moves, we'd recapture the pawn we're down with a huge advantage. But there's still an option for the white pieces to try and avoid retreating the knight. And it's the option I run into the most. Here, when I advance this pawn, they take a moment to move while thinking and conclude they can play queen e2, pinning this pawn. Alright, they've pinned our pawn. It's true we can't capture now, but this has a super simple solution. You pin my pawn? Well, I'll place my queen in front of the king too. And now this pawn is attacking the knight again. The solution. Right now, this knight is being threatened again and has nowhere to go. It has to retreat. It's that simple. And now comes the best part. You can play this whether they've played queen e2 or not, because you already know you have a very good option. So here we'll play knight f6. We develop our pieces normally. I assure you, this gambit is very, very good. I've even played it in slow game tournaments with a very high success rate. In slow games, mind you. In fast games, you can't even imagine how well it works. Alright, now white obviously wants to develop the knight, but what happens? They just can't. If they try to develop this knight over here, it's a disaster. What they want is to try to develop this knight over here. And if they want to develop the knight on f3 and also start developing their bishop, they only have one possible move. d3, which actually looks like a super good move. It threatens our central pawn, it lets the bishop out. Once this pawn is gone, they'll be able to develop the knight on f3, but we've practically won the game here with a move you're gonna love. Watch out for this move. Knight d4! Exclamation point. What are we attacking? Well, the first threat is obvious. We're attacking the queen, right? But we also have another threat. Knight takes c2, check, and we'd also take the rook. In other words, they must move the queen to one of these two squares, either d1 or d2, to keep defending this c2 point. If they don't move it to those two spots and, for example, place it on f1, very bad move. We'd win the rook. But what they don't know is that whether they go to d1 or d2, it doesn't matter. The threat is still there, and we're going to drop the spectacular bomb of knight takes c2 check. We're going to take the rook, so they must capture this knight, and here, we haven't won the rook, but we have won the queen thanks to this discovered check. Pawn takes d3. Check, and we're gonna take the queen. They can play, for example, knight e2 trying to save themselves, but we take the queen with the pawn, and if they try to block with the queen, well, we'll simply capture it with the pawn, don't capture it with the queen. Because then they'd recapture with the knight, instead, simply d takes e2, and we'd have an extra queen. But this is just the beginning of this gambit, because watch out, it keeps getting better and better. We win immediately, as we've seen, if they play d3, careful, one of the most common moves in the position, because it's very hard to play anything else. The knight doesn't move, this bishop can't move either. But it's true that this knight on c3 can move. What happens, chess teacher, if instead of playing d3, they develop the knight in a supernatural way? Well, don't worry, because here we continue in a spectacular way. Again, knight d4. As you can see, this gambit isn't complicated. The moves repeat quite a bit in the different lines, so the correct moves will always come to mind. We attack the queen, now it can retreat without any problem. Logically, it must go to d1 because we're threatening the fork again, but now the tactical theme of knight takes c2 wouldn't work, right? Because they'd simply take the knight and nothing happened here. Alright, so here we're gonna play with logic. We would love to play d5. We could do it if our opponent hadn't played queen e2 and us queen e7, because the queen would be defending this point. However, since they played the queen game, we can't play d5 directly. Or can we? D5, brutal move. It's true that now it's wonderful, right? If they move the bishop, we've achieved what we wanted. We're going to win back the pawn. But of course, this pawn is completely free, and they have two pieces threatening it. They can capture it. Knight takes and bishop takes, for example, right? And now we're down two pawns. Actually, it's just one, because we're going to recapture this pawn on f5. You know that when we're down a pawn, if we justify it by having much more initiative and a stronger attack, it's much better to have the attack than the pawn. In this case, our opponent hasn't developed any pieces. They just have a very poorly placed bishop here because no one's defending it, while we have a super active knight, a pawn restricting the position, and an extremely active bishop as well. We can push forward and launch this attack right here. We can threaten this bishop, leading to various consequences for the white pieces. This queen is very active with discovered attacks, and to top it off, sorry, we can castle queenside to bring the rook into play too. In other words, we're doing great in this position. And not only that, but white can make multiple mistakes here. The most common mistake I see, and the most natural move in this position, is developing this knight to e2. Since they can't develop it to f3 or h3 because we doubled our pawns and be in an excellent spot, people often develop their knight to e2, and this is a serious mistake, a very, very serious one. Why? Because we can follow up with a truly impressive move, the pen with bishop to g4. This knight has pinned itself. With the move bishop g4, we put pressure on this knight with both our knight and bishop. And as you can see, there's absolutely no way to save it. None at all. If they play f3, we just exchange and threaten the pin and the rook again. Therefore, we're gonna win this knight. Knight to e2 wouldn't be a viable move. Alright, another move I see quite often is c3, thinking, look, what's really bothering me is this knight right here. It's pressuring many squares, so I want to threaten it to make it move away. If we retreat the knight, it's true, white has achieved their goal. But there's a tactical theme here that probably wouldn't have occurred to you if you hadn't seen the video, and for this alone, you've gotta give me a like, because now when they play c3, you'll know the correct move is knight to f3, double exclamation mark. A spectacular bombshell. Check. Obviously, they can capture our knight. If they capture it with the queen, we win the queen. If they capture with the knight, we just recapture, discover check, we take here, so the only good move seems to be, logically, capturing with the pawn, ensuring they take our knight. However, we can continue with pawn takes f3, discovered check with the queen, the king has to move, and once it does, we'll simply follow up with bishop d3 check, they must block, we'll capture with the pawn, check, take the queen, and it'll be a total steal for us. And if, when we capture this pawn, instead of moving the king, which, as you've seen, would practically end in checkmate or at least winning the queen, they block directly with the knight, well, that makes a lot of sense, you see. We just gave away a knight, the opponents might think, well, now I'll give you one and we'll continue the game. Well, no, because here there's a spectacular bombshell that I'd like you to pause the video and try to find to see if you can. I'm going to explain it to you right now. Pay attention. The move is bishop to c2. It's very low, it's very logical. We're threatening the queen and she can't go anywhere. The only move available to not lose her is to capture this bishop. And since we've deflected the queen from defending the knight, we'd simply follow with queen takes e2 checkmate. You're gonna love this. When we play this gambit here, and they capture you. Remember, it's very important to advance to threaten this knight, but they might not play along with queen e2. It's very likely they will, yes. We've seen how this ends, but many people, when we threaten the knight, see it can't go anywhere and indeed retreat the knight to avoid losing it. Those are the only two possible moves, the only two, queen e2 and retreating the knight. We've already seen queen e2. What happens if they retreat the knight? Logically, as I was telling you, we're gonna play d5, threatening this bishop. We don't really care where this bishop goes. Maybe the most active is to place it on b5 to threaten our knight. Yes, we could follow with bishop takes f5. It would be a totally extraordinary move. As you can see, thanks to this gambit, we'll recover the pawn. We're not even down any pawns, and also after bishop takes f5, knight f6, bishop c5, short castle, opening the diagonal for the rook, this would be a totally comfortable game for us. But we even have a better move that I love, which is queen g5, which is the one I always use when they retreat the knight directly back. Now, there are things you should know. First of all, we're threatening queen takes g2, winning the rook, because there'd be no way to defend it, and then attacking the knight. Therefore, here, well, what most do is first capture this knight, and you should know this. First, you recapture here. Why? Because it's check. So first you recapture this piece here, and now they absolutely have to address the threat on g2. If they don't exchange, it's exactly the same. Don't worry, they should just stop this threat. And there are simply three ways to defend this threat, king f1, which would be fabulous for us. We'd continue with our development, bishop takes, knight f6. We can even attack a lot, right? Castle, and we'd place the rook on the same file as the king, but no one has played king f1 against me to date. They've just made two moves, g3 and g4. Let's see both of them. If they play g3, how can we continue? Well, here, there are many ways to continue. Among them, bishop takes f5, it would be a totally extraordinary way. In fact, it's what I recommend to you. Bishop takes f5, and now they're left with many weaknesses on the king side. We're not down a pawn, we're equal in material, and our position is quite superior. We have the b file for the rook, we're going to develop the bishop on c5, pointing directly at this f2 point. The knight will come out via f6, castle will attack the f2 point again, also with the rook, and this seems to be quite bad for the white pieces. Mind you, the move I see most is g4, so now they're defending this pawn very strongly. They keep holding on to their extra pawn, the g4 pawn is protected by the queen, and it looks like we're having trouble continuing our development here. This bishop seems like it can only come out here or here, but don't worry because what you should do here, and I love this, I love the look on, well, I won't use a bad word, right? The look on my opponent's faces when I play bishop takes f5. And they immediately realized that this move was extremely bad. Bishop takes f5 is simply winning the pawn back. But why are we giving away the bishop? Well, don't worry, because the bishop can't be taken. It would open up the line for us to play queen g2, threatening the rook. Can that rook be defended? No, they're going to lose the rook. But they always do the same thing to me. First, they give me a check. I can't play g6 because they trade and I'd lose the rook. Careful, it's not that easy. So don't worry. If they try to check you, don't be afraid at all. Just move the king away. There's no fear if you're going to win a free rock. You shouldn't be afraid of anything at all. For example, if they keep attacking you, watch out. There's no rush to take that rook because that rook isn't going anywhere. Let's defend well first against a simple attack because the queen just comes in, she can't do anything. They threaten the bishop with a check. Well, I play knight h6, threatening the queen, and now this bishop is very well defended by the rook. How can they continue? Well, the only somewhat normal square the queen has is this one right here, right? Queen e3, sorry, queen e6, but this is a total mistake. We could take the rook directly, but the move I like best is this one here, bishop d6. And now, as you can see, this rook can't be saved, this queen can't go anywhere, we're trapping the queen, so this queen is almost certainly going to end up being lost. Against any move, instead of taking the rook, I'm going to play rook e8, capturing the queen. She has nowhere to go. And not only that, but I'll take the queen, and then later I'll even take the rook as well. This happened to them for trying to get some counterplay with the queen. I see it a lot. If they don't try this counterplay, it's fine. They'll just lose the rook, and that's it. Be very careful with this. Very careful. We're threatening the knight, and we've seen both queen e2 and knight g1, right? They seem to be the only two options if they don't want to lose the knight. But here, if you play against a pro or someone who knows this, Gambit, well, they might play this huge knight sacrifice, knight d4, Don't worry, it looks like a brutal sacrifice. In fact, it is a brutal sacrifice if we don't know it. But if we do, like in this video where I'll show you, there's no problem at all. Why is this a good move? Well, you shouldn't take it because then they'd come in with the queen, give you a massive check. You couldn't move forward because they'd take you. Plus, they're threatening a discovered attack we can't take because they'd eat our rook, right? If we play knight to f6, they sacrifice the queen with the move g7. A brutal move because we capture the queen and they play g takes h8, capturing the rook and promoting another queen. So this would be quite horrible for us. So, in conclusion, what should you do if they play this massive knight sacrifice on d4, which, as I said, is extremely dangerous? Well, simply play knight to s6, preventing the queen's entry. Just like that. And here, absolutely nothing has happened. Now, we are indeed threatening the knight. Logically, they must do something. For example, the most common thing is to capture in 80% of games, but if they don't capture, it doesn't matter, okay? We'll continue with our ideas. We're going to recapture with the b pawn so that now, no matter what the opponent plays, we'll follow up with d5, threatening the bishop, and we're going to recapture this pawn on f5. And as you can see in this gambit, whenever we want, we're going to win back the pawn we gave away, and on top of that, we'll be better off. Let me give you a very quick example, for instance. I'm going to develop my pieces like this so that now it's going to be very difficult for them to get out. Let's castle. This file is also going to be completely open. We can advance a lot through here. This position is a clear advantage for black, even though they tried to play the correct gambit. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to say, well, I've checked this gambit with Stockfish, and the move it recommends isn't capturing this pawn. Instead, the best move is to play d4, counterattacking in the center. First of all, you're right. And now I'll show you how to play if they play d4, which is the best move according to the engine. However, those of you watching this can also check how often white plays d4, and you'll see that only 3% of people play d4 against the gambit we're proposing. Therefore, it's something very unusual, but if they play it against you, you must be well prepared. What are we going to do? Well, first of all, we're going to recapture this pawn with our f pawn. Very well, we're attacking the knight. The most likely move is knight takes e5. Now, this knight does have a good square to escape to, and that's by capturing a central pawn. Without a doubt, this looks much better for white. That's right, it looks better. Even so, we're doing very well. Although it might be a bit scary, don't worry, because you're going to learn it. We're not going to capture the knight. Instead, we'll play d5, threatening this bishop here. Excuse me. That said, white can now do the following. Either move the bishop away, which would be perfect because it would give us a tempo to play knight to f6 and prevent queen entries, or play queen to h5 directly. A very good move because it's directly threatening our king with the knight and the queen. And it seems like we have no escape here because g6 is impossible, as knight takes g6 would follow. Well, that's precisely what we're going to do because this, although it looks very good for white, isn't actually that great. They're anticipating too much, perhaps rushing too much. Knight to f6 attacks the queen, attacks the knight, and also attacks the bishop. For now, they can save themselves. To save the knight, they must place this attacked queen on the same file as the rook, for example. The only move they have is queen to h4, since h3 would be controlled by our bishop from a distance. It's true, now we can't capture this knight because, simply, they would capture our rook, and we can't capture this bishop either because they would also simply take the rook. So, what should we do? Well, don't worry because it's much simpler than it seems. We're gonna do the following. First of all, how can we continue the attack? Well, with a brutal move, knight takes d4. We have two pawns against two pawns, meaning we're equal in material. They still can't take the rook because if they take the rook, simply what we do now is knight takes c2, winning a pawn and then taking a rook. That would be fabulous for us. Besides, this knight would surely end up trapped. What should they do? Well, they must try to defend the two things being attacked, the c2 pawn and the c4 bishop. Those are the two things being attacked right now. What move could they make? Bishop to b3 seems logical. They retreat the attacked bishop and defend the c2 point. But this, friends, is a mistake. And why is it a mistake? Because now we're going to jump back with this knight. Knight to f5, attacking the queen. It must stay on the same file as the rook, or else we'll capture the knight. So they have to play queen to h3, and there's no other way. And so here we'll start looking for discovered attacks with this knight to attack the queen with the bishop, and the best move, without a doubt, is this one here. Knight to e7. We attack the queen, but not only that, we also attack this knight in such a way that we've managed to win a piece completely clean. It's true, they've tried to attack a lot with their pieces, with their queen, but even so, we've come out winning a clean piece. It's a bit scary, but it's simple. It's very likely that just by watching this video once, you won't remember all this. That's okay, you can save this video to watch it as many times as you need. So many of you will surely tell me, instead of playing bishop to b3, I'll go into the line you told me. I take the rook and you take mine, and it seems like there's a game here, but don't worry because this doesn't work. If they try to do knight takes h winning the rook, you can even do the following. Look, knight takes f2 check, the king must move, and instead of capturing the rook first, we capture the bishop first because that rook can't escape. So right now, we're going to win this rook and we'll have a free bishop. And not only that, but also this knight is going to have big problems getting out. Whatever they do, for example, here, the most common move I've looked up in the database is bishop to g5, putting a lot of pressure on this knight, but this isn't effective at all. Even with this, we could deliver this tremendous checkmate, one of the most important moves you should remember from this position. If they don't do this, don't worry, because you can capture the rook, play bishop to g7, win this knight, and at the very least you'll have a bishop or a bishop and a knight up. I love it when I play this gambit and people get scared, and instead of capturing or doing something weird, they say, well, I'll just defend the pawn with d3. Watch out, because this is the move I come across most often in my games. Because people think, well, surely what my opponent has prepared is that he wants me to capture the pawn, so I'll just defend it. If he captures, I capture back, and everything's fine. Well, don't worry, because we have some very good news here. Bishop to c5, a very good move. Yeah, then. White could continue recapturing and we'd be in a similar position, but what's happening is that we're tempting white to make this massive move. With the bishop and the knight, they're threatening the f7 square. It seems to be a tremendously brutal threat. It really seems almost impossible to stop. We should probably play knight to h6 or something like that. But we're going to act as if we hadn't seen it, and we'll disconnect the knight from the bishop in such a way that now we are threatening it. Therefore, we force our pawn to continue on his path. There's no turning back now. They're threatening the queen, they're threatening the rook. Most likely, your opponent will tell you in the app's chat, friend, just resign. But not at all, because here, he's the one who has to resign. We're going to play queen to h4, counterattacking the f2 square in a super hard way. A very, very good move. Also, you'll see that this pawn we've advanced is of tremendous importance. Logically, knight takes rook would be made on the next move. They have to try to defend this square. Queen to f3 doesn't work because, for example, we could attack the queen and attack this square here, or the one I like best is to play this pawn here, and then whatever they do, play bishop to g4 and win the queen, because she has no squares left. That's why queen to f3 is useless here. g3 seems like a very bad move, because we could simply slip in with the queen through the white squares, even with the pawn, and this position's going to be tremendously difficult to defend. Here we could attack the queen and the f2 square with the bishop as well, and this is tremendously difficult for white to defend. So let me explain. They always play the same thing against me, either queen to f3, which is very bad, or they castle. If they castle, it seems like everything's saved. There's no more attack because this is well defended, we're not attacking here, and it simply looks like we're going to lose the rook. Now what, chess teacher? It seems like I'm going to lose here no matter what, and there's no way to save ourselves. Well, don't worry, let them capture the rook, knight to f6, and when they capture the rook, knight to g4 so that we're threatening checkmate on h2. And not only that, we're also threatening to break in with 3 pieces on f2. Logically, they'll defend the mate with the move h3 because there's no other move that defends against the checkmate. And when they play h3, we simply attack from here. Knight takes f2. Logically, they have to give up the rook because otherwise we'd have a discovered attack with the bishop. And when they give up the rook, we're going to capture with the queen. So that, right now, we are down a knight. Remember, we're down a knight because we captured a rook, but so did they. And we sacrificed the knight, and they didn't. Therefore, we are down a knight. That's it. The game is forced to be won. The king has to go to h1, and remember this move well because it's key. f3. We're threatening checkmate on the next move, so they must capture. And now what we're going to do is simply play d5, threatening the bishop and threatening to enter through here. Can they try to stop bishop takes h3? No. There's no move for white that avoids bishop takes h3, so since they're at it, they try to defend their bishop. For example, bishop takes d5, right? So now we continue with bishop takes h3, and this really can't be stopped. We're threatening queen g2 checkmate. No matter how much they try to come and trade queens here, it would be queen takes g1 checkmate, because the queen is well defended by the bishop. Therefore, no matter how much they try to play passively against this gambit, they're gonna have serious problems. So if you've made it to the end of the video, please consider leaving a like. It's completely free for you to do, and I truly and deeply appreciate the support. And I have a great time reading your comments too. So I hope you loved it, and we'll see you tomorrow, as always, friends, in the next chess video. Goodbye.